Hey there, this is a video responding to Madvocate's video, Spider-Man Way Home Machine Broke. Please watch at least the first 10 minutes of that video before watching mine to understand what it is that I am responding to, and don't take my words as gospel nor as a green light to start harassing someone. My video is going to revolve solely on critique and analysis of Madvocate's attempt at a movie breakdown. Links will be in the description down below. So, about a year ago I came across Spider-Man Way Home Machine Broke. After watching the first 10 minutes of this thing, it felt as if though I was suffering from an aneurysm of sheer stupidity. This video has since then been living rent-free in my mind, and I'm now here to collect what is due. Do ignore how it took over 1 year to get going. The video in question is broken down into several somewhat isolated parts, and I intend to be focusing on the first part. Do enjoy this attempt of mine at a response, and I apologize for my subpar audio quality. Madvocate seems to find it unbelievable that anyone would believe Mysterio's narrative, that being his opening statement. But he also doesn't address the presence of one Alex Jones, J. Jonah Jameson, as played by J.K. Simmons. Here the film presents a conspiracy theorist peddling the claim that there was a massive cover-up to protect Spider-Man and his actions from scrutiny during the London attack, heavily implying that there was foul play involved. So, let's address what that means for the movie when it portrays a conspiracy theory and how those actually work. The definition of a conspiracy theory, according to Merriam-Webster, a theory that explains an event or set of circumstances as the result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators, and from Google, a belief that some secret but influential organization is responsible for an event or phenomenon. This in context of Far From Home would suggest that a secret organization, akin to S.H.I.E.L.D., which Nick Fury was the director of, would be responsible for the information regarding the details of the London attack, which Nick Fury was present for, giving fuel to the theory. A common tactic by conspiracy theorists is to present any context-relevant evidence or information which can be presented in a manner that proves their point, then using it to dismiss pre-established facts and logic in order to further ascertain that their theory is the absolute truth regarding the context in question. It is essentially a dismissal strategy wherein the context of the situation is misrepresented through bad faith argumentation and any counterpoints are rejected outright as delusional or as an appeal to the status quo. Now with that bit of understanding and logic in mind, ask yourself the question, how is the conspiracy theory presented in the film? Well, J. Jonah Jameson presents it as a dismissal of the previously known information regarding said London attack, and treats it as an absolute truth of the matter. He essentially claims that the existence of the footage that he had access to disproves all other evidence which would exonerate Spider-Man from wrongdoing. This is an important detail because this is how conspiracy theorists argue, and there is real-world precedence for this method being functional. E.g., Donald Trump's big election lie, which is still a major talking point for Republican nominees, the misinformation regarding the dangers of the COVID-19 virus as well as its vaccine, and from further into the past there is the moon landing being faked, and flat earth theory. All of these conspiracy theories share one particular form of logic when being presented. They skewer details and project malicious intent upon some entity or group of people. In my most recent occurring example, conspiracy theorists are stating that the COVID-19 virus is barely harmful to most people and therefore there is no need for a vaccine. On top of that, there is also a widespread talking point about the vaccine that it is solely manufactured as a scam for the benefit of the pharmaceutical industry. Big Pharma is oh so scary. Now, let's check in with the MCU to see if there is precedent for people taking serious issue with superheroes, which would make them more susceptible to manipulation in this context, like a political legislation regarding their actions and accountability. There's the Sokovia Accords narrative plot in Captain America Civil War, wherein the governments around the world made an effort to hold superpowered individuals accountable for the reckless destruction that they caused when attempting to save the day. This means that there is a desire in-universe to hold superpowered individuals accountable for the destruction resulting from their actions and engagements, which there was plenty of in the finale to Far From Home, and with Mysterio dead, leaving Spider-Man as the only living superpowered individual to hold accountable from the event. None of what I just went over was even mentioned in Madvocate's video. Instead, there's a massive effort made to prove that the evidence presented by Mysterio shouldn't be believed by anyone in the universe whatsoever. He goes into great detail about all the available evidence that the investigating federal body would gain access to over the course of a thorough investigation, which is fair play, that evidence should become available over time, but he equates it to everyone in the world having access to that same information within a week of the London event. This claim includes video evidence from the drones after getting dismantled by technicians working the case, also suggesting that nobody, such as fake Nick Fury, made any statements to clarify the reality of the situation, which there is no evidence of him doing or not doing, thus making it a moot point, but a nice edit. While the flow of information on the internet may be the greatest and fastest spreaders of news to the point where it often turns into a media circus, it would more than likely take several weeks if not months for all of this information to reach a state of public awareness. Now, I do agree that intelligent people with the appropriate information would not believe the conspiracy theory and would recognize it for the slander that it is. However, that doesn't mean not one individual, let alone 1,000 New Yorkers, wouldn't believe the conspiracy, since most people in the universe probably does not have all the appropriate information to be able to recognize the truth. All that we as the audience members of the film see is that enough people from New York believe mysterious lies and begin harassing Peter Parker, which enables the plot of the film to unfold. All the mistakes Peter and Doctor Strange makes are in immediate sequence to the harassment and university rejection which threatens to ruin Peter's life. Throughout their YouTube career, Madvocate has seemingly upheld a stance dictating that opinions and reviews of artistic media, e.g. films, can be objective should one utilize facts and logic when establishing one's perspective of the art in question. This stance is a failure to recognize one's own biases and subjectivity that establishes a person's perspective on anything and everything, almost as if to say that proclaiming to use facts and logic substitutes one's own biases with objectivity and establishes a singular, true-form criticism. The issue with any and all forms of logic is the human element. No person, no matter their perspective or level of informed knowledge, can uphold true-form objectivity without their biases or background interfering with their conclusions. This essentially boils down to proclaiming that should someone be found to disagree with the stated opinion of the fact and logic persona, that they are objectively wrong, which is simply a delusional statement to make in regards to any and all artistic media. The value of art lies in the eyes of the beholder, not the projected words and pedantic logic presented. The truth of the matter is that everyone always utilizes facts and logic when establishing their opinion of anything and everything. So essentially what this stance is saying is, I am just like everyone else. But those who use this stance unironically often mean to say, I am an intellectual and my opinion is correct. This is specifically what the issue is with current trends of artistic media discussion or criticism. It often devolves into establishing a correct opinion of whatever the product in question may be, rather than an honest discussion about one's understanding and appreciation for the media content in question. Instead, a tribalistic attitude has dominated the discussion landscape where people are seemingly divided into two camps, the thinkers and the feelers. This is nothing new, however. If you were to roll back the years to around 2010 and visit the then still ongoing discussions regarding the Star Wars prequels, you would find that most rhetoric was expressed in this particular manner. This approach to criticism is somewhat asinine in its view of artistic media, as it often attempts to take everything that has been presented at face value or outright disingenuously showcasing parts of the art. For example, when someone presents a timer to a film scene or sequence in order to prove how long an action took to complete. In Madvocate's case, it's often showcased without taking into account different things happening at the same time, such as when there is an insert cut of a reaction shot from a character or the like in the middle of a sequence, all the while his timer continues ticking. This completely ignores the fundamentals of filmmaking, which is to present an experience to the audience, and everything shown in a film is for the benefit of said audience. Thus, screen time cannot be utilized as a one-to-one comparable to real time. This pedantic logic is the single most consistent trend across all of Madvocate's videos that I've watched. It is an endless barrage of highlighting minor details or uttered phrases as a means of questioning the level of intelligence presented within a film. All without entertaining internal logic nor attempting to comprehend the intent behind the events that unfold. But logic isn't the only thing being omitted either. When attempting to critique a narrative, it appears to be almost common practice to exclude details that disprove or doesn't fit in the logic of said criticism. For example, part of the opening sequence of No Way Home is Peter Parker swinging his way back to Aunt May's apartment. At least, that is how Madvocate presents said event. In actuality, there's a fair bit more that happens leading up to Peter Parker returning home. So let's go through it all, step by step, and attempt not to miss out on anything of relevance. First, he grabs MJ after the doxing happens. Make no mistake, this event is a doxing attack, and swings several blocks away from the people on ground level that were harassing her. Second, he stops swinging and lands down on top of a bridge where he calls Ned for a funny joke, followed by several helicopters descending upon their location, continuing the targeted harassment at a greater scale. Third, realizing that swinging around the city isn't going to cut it for evading the helicopters, Peter Parker elects to dive into the New York underground, which he traverses until reaching Queens, where he and MJ re-emerge. Fourth and finally, he swings the last remaining distance to get home and crawls in through his bedroom window. Notice how if you omit details from a sequence of events, you can easily make it seem far dumber than it actually is. By including every step of the way, it becomes apparent that the sequence was not rushed together, nor did it showcase Spider-Man as an idiot. Throughout this entire sequence, Peter Parker consistently makes smart decisions for someone his age and successfully beats the helicopters to his home, thus mitigating the chances of someone recording him crawling in through the window, which would be concrete evidence confirming his identity as Spider-Man. All of this is simply glossed over in Madvocate's video, where it is simply stated that he takes her, MJ, to his apartment. It's Aunt May's, but I'll let it slide. Thus confirming that he, Spider-Man, is Peter Parker. Now, before someone comes up with the ever so brilliant response of, "That wasn't Madvocate's point," let me iterate upon what I said earlier. Spider-Man got doxed in the opening of the film, and he was accused of murder. These two facts together makes it highly likely that regardless of what Peter Parker did in this scene, it wouldn't impact whether or not people gained confirmation that he is Spider-Man. His secret identity would be ruined no matter if he went straight home or played hide and seek with the helicopters. The very next scene after everyone is back in Aunt May's apartment is the federal agents busting in and securing evidence from their home, like the Iron Spider suit, which would be a dead giveaway, confirming that Peter Parker and Spider-Man are in fact one and the same. Madvocate's whole argument attempted to portray Peter Parker as a poorly written character within No Way Home, for having made a questionable decision, which, as Madvocate implied, resulted in his identity being confirmed. He attempts to justify this criticism by pointing to times Peter Parker was in intense situations, like Endgame, making it appear as if though there's an inconsistency within the writing. Yet, as I just went over, the identity was beyond saving the moment Peter Parker was doxed. On top of Madvocate omitting the vast majority of the sequence of events that showcases Peter Parker not being an idiot. Over the course of their video on Spider-Man No Way Home, Madvocate's analysis of the film's events are presented at face value, and the claims of what the film is trying to showcase or present is approached from a mixture of both in-universe and out-of-universe criticism. I stated earlier in the video, one of the first lines Madvocate says is, "How the hell does anyone believe Mysterio?" Enunciated as if though they are in the movie's universe and are lamenting people who they have observed believing in an obvious lie, as opposed to being an audience member witnessing people whom have been manipulated. Madvocate then goes on to simply point the finger at all the evidence that could possibly be accessed in-universe to disprove the conspiracy theory, without discussing nor taking into account how it would be possible for someone to access this evidence or to fall for a lie of this magnitude. Essentially not doing the, proverbially speaking, analytical legwork to assess and prove how the film doesn't make sense. It is simply implied through pointing out various relevant details of the film and then drawing a definitive implication of the film's quality. Utilizing a pedantic argumentative logic, Madvocate hyperfixates on these details as flaws of the film, while throwing shades at the writers of the film over something he himself is being unable to understand or suspend his disbelief over. No matter how simple it is to put two and two together for his whole tirade to fall apart logically. For example, Madvocate emphasizes that the Spider-Man suit has recording capabilities and plays a large section of the Far From Home finale to showcase existing evidence disproving the accusations. Except he neglects to realize, while showing, that the recording capabilities in the Spider-Man suit was the AI Tony Stark installed in the Homecoming suit, which had access to Stark Industries servers. Video footage, as any YouTuber will inform you of, requires significant storage space to prevent it from overwhelming the recording device, which in this context would be the Spider-Man suit with specialized optics and electronics for his gadgets. My point being that the suit more than likely won't have enough storage capabilities built into it or access to a server. Mysterio had the EDIF glasses, which possessed unlimited access to the Stark servers and more than likely blocked access for Spider-Man. But none of this matters, even if the footage was available to be presented to the public. Madvocate himself pointing out that Mysterio's footage should fall under scrutiny for having been revealed a week after the event in question. That same logic could simply be applied against any footage from the Spider-Man suit, claiming it to have been falsified, just like Mysterio's. Regardless, Madvocate's point is simply to highlight a perceived negative of the film. The issue is that his approach is lacking in logic in regards to context and following the through line of the film. We are instead ham-fisted with a series of surface-level critiques that omit details from the subject matter that proves the internal logic of the film is sound. Not to mention that his own logic is hypocritically applied exclusively from one perspective only, and not both sides of the argument, making his whole point moot. It is as if though he believes that listing the negatives of a film in a pros-cons sort of manner is doing the full legwork of an analytical essay, rather than a step along the way to assess something's intrinsic value. He is obsessing over the smaller details within those isolated sequences of the film rather than asking the simple question of how does this all fit together and what was the intent behind its creation, and is content to leave it all as nothing more than an implication. Regardless of the actual impact the details in question holds upon the narrative or artistic expression present within the media. Madvocate's level of logic is simply that of a contrarian trying to prove their point by pointing the finger to smaller anecdotal details, and in a cynical manner exclaiming that this is evidence supporting their claims, choosing to ignore whether or not said details are impactful to the overall narrative or experience for their audience, instead presenting themselves as a true intellectual capable of seeing through the quality of the film, essentially positioning themselves as above general audiences and of greater intelligence, in spite of that the main actionable intelligence on display is simply just questioning the film's events and logic, while omitting details and logic relevant to the film's narrative, which could disprove any of their points made. It's a disingenuous form of critique that is upheld through quick and clever editing, mixed with a mind-numbing background beat and a monotone narration that hides the true stupidity on display, by presenting visual clips that could portray skepticism or disbelief along with exclaiming a similarly presented statement or question. Madvocate performs a manipulation of their audience's perception of the film in question. Through this barrage of gish-galloped critique, we as an audience of these videos are overwhelmed by a non-stop barrage of skepticism and are ironically subjected to a similar form of manipulation to that which Mysterio attempted to pull in Far From Home. That appears to be the intent of the videos posted to the channel. It's a grift to appeal to current populist ideals of mainstream culture, that we, the general audiences, are being fed garbage with stupid written all over it, all the while never addressing how or why we got to this perceivable point and attempt to understand the pitfall that we find ourselves in currently with mainstream artistic media. Madvocate loves to latch on to the idea of objective criticism, while failing to understand the very concept of objectivity. The moment one injects positivity or negativity into a critique, it ceases to be objective. Essentially, when establishing a sequence of events that within a film and drawing attention to who is responsible for it happening, it is an objective observation. However, once attempting to ascertain whether the sequence is good or bad in any capacity, it becomes subjective. I am hereby imploring Madvocate to do some actual analysis and using their own words, thoughts and logic to present a conclusive argument for the level of quality that the film holds, instead of constantly pointing things out on the screen like the Leo meme from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. My advice for anyone wanting to understand films and the process of filmmaking better, which in my opinion should be part of the criticism process, to seek out YouTube channels or the like with inside knowledge of how films are made. I would recommend Ponysmasher, a channel run by the director of films such as Lights Out, Shazam, and Annabelle Creation. He has highly insightful videos on how a film is made and why certain relatively easily observable faults emerge during a film's creation. In his own words, movie making is nothing but problem solving. Film is, in my view, simply an expression of ideas, emotions, or ideology. It is this expression that reaches out to the audience to invoke an experience and inspire future expressions. It is a beautiful craft that, on the scale that movies are presented, cannot be done by a singular individual. The issues that often emerge within films occur not due to incompetence nor stupidity, but rather through miscommunication or misunderstandings. No two people share the same mind nor perspective. Something that is bothering me as I am making this video is the idea of Brandolini's law, which is a concept that states the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than to produce it. I have written in my script for this response video roughly 12 A4 pages with a word size of 16 to debunk and respond to a less than 10-minute segment, not to mention the actual length of my finished video itself. I am, to say the least, exhausted. Let's not forget that Madvocate is the dude who suggested that Spider-Man should hide from helicopters by sitting on the roof of a skyscraper and wait for everything to calm down, by omitting that the scene in question featured helicopters altogether. The helicopters were harassing Spidey, which he evaded by traveling through the underground from wherever they were at the start of the film to Queens. Helicopters, for those whom may be unaware, are capable of omnidirectional flight, meaning that if Spidey were to ascend a building to sit on its rooftop, they could simply follow him and continue with their harassment, something he and MJ were actively trying to avoid. The manner in which Madvocate argues about movies is the cinema criticism version of the Gish-Gallop argumentative strategy, which is to say, it's a manner of throwing as much shit at the wall as rapidly as possible. In this case, mostly through vague implications and random inserts of cool editing, to make discerning any actual critical or argumentative flaws awkwardly difficult and extremely time-consuming. This guy loves to throw critique at films in an attempt to make it look stupid, yet he can only succeed by omitting facts and presenting a dubious logic. His level of intelligence absolutely astounds me.
What the hell is this?